All right.
Good morning, everyone. Jose pointed out that I failed to introduce myself. Julie Cole, Director of Policy and Publications. Welcome, everyone. And just again, as a reminder, if you needed to get the slides separately, they're posted in the DCCR under the training. So Jose and I are going to jointly do the student assessment update. So we'll be talking back and forth with you guys. Alrighty. STAAR testing requirements for students in grades 3 through 8. This is not new information. If it's new information, it'll show a little new icon. But we get lots of questions on testing requirements, and so I thought I'd put it in some slides, and then I have a new resource for you to use as well. So state and federal requirements require all students in grades 3 through 8 to take STAAR. There's very few exceptions. One of them is in Texas Administrative Code 101.1005, and that is a hot link when you get the presentation, so you can click right to it. And they are required to take their grade level assessment with very few exceptions for accelerated students, and that information is in Texas Administrative Code 101.3011. So all grades 3 through 8 students are required to test with very few exceptions. So for end of course testing requirements, students enrolled in specific high school courses are required by federal and state law to take the corresponding STAAR end of course assessment. And we often get questions about what courses are associated with those, especially as we talk about the waiver in a few minutes. So these are the PEAMS numbers for the courses that have associated STAAR end of course assessments. So for example, I just got a question the other day about a student who took an English, EOC English 2 prep class. So did that count for the waiver? No, because he took the English 2 class with that PEAMS number like 2 years ago. So it has to be these specific courses with these specific PEAMS codes in order for the waiver and to take the STAAR end of course assessment. And I'll talk more about the waiver in a few slides. So when should students take the STAAR end of course assessment? They should only take it as they're completing the course, but they should take it regardless of enrolled grade level. So we often have some middle school students, and every once in a while, an elementary school student who is super accelerated and taking Algebra 1, for example. That's our most popular accelerated one. So that student can take the STAAR Algebra 1 class whenever they're completing the course. We also have some concerns about students who, or actually we hear about it later, students who took the test, the end of course assessment, after just one semester. Well, first of all, that's an opportunity to learn issue because students haven't been taught the entire curriculum. Therefore, it's unfair to test them with a test that tests the entire curriculum. So you should not have students take the end of course assessments if they've only had one half of the instruction. And actually that is a testing irregularity. So we'll talk about irregularities after lunch. So this is a new resource, which is why it has that new icon. This is something we just created and posted yesterday, I believe. So to help you guys figure out who takes what test, we've created this new flow chart, and it's on the STAAR resources page, and that's a hot link to it. It's right under the substitute assessment chart, which I'll show in just a few minutes. It starts with what grade is the student enrolled in. And so there's a track for students in K through 2, which most of you hopefully know. You're not, we don't test students in kindergarten, first grade, or second grade. It has a question about students enrolled in grades 9 through 12. And again, those mostly are taking STAAR end of course assessments if they're enrolled in those courses. And then the majority of the chart is focused on students enrolled in grades 3 through 8 and whether or not they're receiving grade level instruction or above grade level instruction. And so there's little paths to tell you what tests they should take. So hopefully you can find that new resource on the STAAR resources webpage. It's the testing requirement flowchart. Okay, the agency announced, you're flipping slides on me. The agency announced the approval of our federal waiver for accelerated testers. We've been working with the feds, and as you know, because you've been dealing with this for quite a long time, what the testing requirements were for accelerated students. The federal government finally approved our waiver for these students, but they did not only approve the exception for mathematics students, they also approved the exception for any middle school students taking reading language arts, taking science, or taking mathematics. So these students, because of the approved waiver, can avoid the double testing in middle school. So we've always discouraged double testing for, gosh, many, many years, pretty much the whole STAAR program since 2012. But this approval of the federal waiver seals that in. So that's excellent. So again, the guidance has been the same, is that students take their enrolled grade level test unless they're receiving instruction above grade level and have a corresponding test to take. So if they're receiving if they're receiving instruction in Algebra 1, I need to slow down, then they take Algebra 1 instead of their grade level tests, and that counts towards their graduation requirement. But if they're receiving accelerated instruction in, for example, geometry, we no longer have a geometry STAAR end of course assessment, so they would be required to take their grade level assessment, even if they've already taken it, because they have to have a score in mathematics in grades 3 through 8. Go ahead and flip to the next slide, thanks. So, because we got the waiver to avoid that double testing, there is one small catch to it, in that, again, the students are required to have scores in grades 3 through 8, reading and math, and at least once in high school. So if they have completed all of their STAAR end of course assessments prior to high school, then they still need to take a test in high school that we can use for federal accountability purposes. The benefit of it is we've gotten the ACT and the SAT test approved by the federal government. And that's a test that those accelerated students likely take at some point in high school, because many of them are going on to post-secondary endeavors. So starting this fall, students who have completed those requirements, those end of course requirements in a specific subject area, will need to take the ACT or the SAT at least once in high school for federal accountability purposes. The Performance Reporting Division will generate a list of students who have completed STAAR end of course assessment required in a specific content area before grade 9 and who don't have an ACT or an SAT score on record. So those are the ones that you'll need to test at some point in their high school career. And they will release that list in the TEAL accountability system. All right, time for our first check-in. Danny, whenever you're ready. Let's see if you were paying attention or know the answer. Okay, here's our first question. Which students are required to take STAAR? Answer A is all students in grades 3 through 8. Answer B, all students in grades 3 through 8 with very few exceptions. Answer C, all students in grades 9 through 12. Answer D, no one except students who are new to Texas. Give you a few minutes. You can watch on the screen how many people have responded. And so when it gets up to a high percentage, we'll go ahead and close the poll.
Can I give him a clue?
No. This isn't new. What clue do you want to give them?
Remember that there's multiple select here.
I don't think this is a multiple select. Do you think this? Alrighty, here's the results. 29% of you said all students in grade 3 through 8. 71% of you said all students in grades 3 through 8 with very few exceptions. Thank goodness no one said all students in grades 9 through 12. That one's definitely wrong. And no one said that one except students who are new to Texas. That's correct. So the most correct answer is all students in grades 3 through 8 with very few exceptions. And that exception is for recent asylees or refugees who meet specific criteria. All right, let's close that poll out and continue on with our slides. Okay, here we are with STAAR substitute assessments. So again, this changed last year, so it's not really new, but we didn't have a full year of assessment, so it might be new to some of you guys. Students are required to take the STAAR end of course assessment at least once, and then if they don't meet the passing requirement, they can retest, or they may use a substitute assessment to fulfill their graduation requirement. In order to use a substitute assessment, they need to have taken and failed the STAAR end of course assessment, and they need to have taken the substitute assessment and met the required scores. Students at any grade level can use a substitute assessment when they're enrolled in the STAAR end of course STAAR end of course corresponding course. That's a lot to say. So even if I earned a score as a middle school student, but I'm in Algebra 1 in high school in grade 9, I still have to sit for the test, but if for some reason I don't pass that test, I could possibly go back and use my PSAT score to substitute for Algebra 1. All right, so also last year we put out this STAAR substitute assessment flowchart. Again, it's on the STAAR resources website. Under the general resources, there's several links where the FAQ is. So if you have questions about the STAAR substitute assessment requirements, again, don't just look at the flowchart. The flowchart's kind of the cheat sheet, but hopefully it will help you. You need to go back and look at the Texas Education Code, which is 39025, as well as the Texas Administrative Code, which is 101.4002. And then the verification of results for substitute assessments is in 101.4005. So definitely use the flowchart as a resource, but to look at all the specific requirements, you need to refer back to the law and the rule. All right, so lots of questions since the cancellation of STAAR assessments last year. And so we've put out some guidance, but we want to make sure that it's clear for everybody as to what students can get the 2020 STAAR end of course assessment waiver for last spring and summer. So to qualify for the STAAR end of course assessment, a student must have been enrolled in the course during the spring or summer. So if they weren't enrolled in the course with the actual PEIMS number, for example, for Algebra 1, the PEIMS code is 031-00500. And these codes are on that previous slide. So they have to be enrolled in that specific course during spring or summer. Fall 2019 does not count. They have to have completed the full course credit by the end of the spring or summer 2020. Now that doesn't mean all of it was taken in spring or summer. They could have started it in the fall and then completed full course credit in the spring, which is what most students do. And they have to have earned the credit. So if they failed, that doesn't count because they're going to have to repeat the course. But if they earn full credit by the end of the spring or summer 2020, then they get the STAAR end of course assessment waiver. That means that the student is no longer responsible for meeting that graduation requirement. So they don't have to take that test at any point in the future, and they don't have to meet that graduation requirement. And that actually reduces the number of tests that they're required to pass for graduation purposes. And that might come in handy for some students later if they need to look at the individual graduation committee. So if you're not sure which students have received the waiver, one, especially if they're new students coming into your district, you should be looking at their transcript or academic achievement record. The previous district should have put the 2020 waived code in there. But if you get students who don't have that 2020 waiver code, but you look at their course completion data, and you see that they did meet that criteria, then you can go ahead and add the 2020 waived code to the transcript. So it's not that they have to have recorded, we've gotten a lot of questions about that. It's not that they have to have recorded it by the beginning of this school year. The student had to have completed the credit before the beginning of this school year. The waiver code can be applied at any point in the past or the future for students who aren't here. All right, so new this year as well, earlier in, I think earlier this month, I was gonna say earlier in August, but we're still in August. Earlier this month, the governor and the commissioner went ahead and waived the Student Success Initiative requirements. What they waived is that promotion retention part, as well as the 3 testing opportunities. What they did not waive, which you're still required to do, is the early notice. And by the way, those forms were just posted on our website this week, earlier this week. They did not waive the accelerated requirement for any students, but specifically for students in 5 and 8. And they didn't waive the end of year at-risk notice. And then we at the state still have to do the 10-day reporting turnaround. So this is a slide that shows you what was waived and what was not waived, because we've gotten lots of questions. And this information will also be available when we put out the SSI manual that I'll talk about in just a minute. However, the result of this waiver is that there's only going to be one administration of the STAAR grades 5 and 8 mathematics and reading tests. Only one administration this school year.
And Julie, speaking of the changes to SSI, especially the one you just mentioned, so now we don't have retest opportunities. There's not a promotion requirement. So because of that, we only needed one administration. The most sensible thing was to move it back with the other 3 to 8 administrations, so we can keep 3 to 8 together. However, the decision came a little later than what we were working on, so we have to make some compromises, right? By now, probably all of you have seen the calendar of events posted on our site. If you haven't, please, if you go on the DCCR under calendars, you should be able to find the PDF. So what do? We moved 5 and 8, but we kept it under its own individual column because, as Julie mentioned on the slide before, we're still required to produce the reports within 10 days for the students. So because of that, you're going to see its own date for 5 and 8. Even though it's going to be given in May, you will still need to return your scorables ahead of the rest so that we can process them ahead of the rest and also post them earlier, the results on the new on-demand file that we're about to speak. Another compromise that we decided was better to keep is for 5 and 8, you will see the April indicator, because while we push it, it's still the primary administration, and the primary administration is always April for these grades. This is going to help us be consistent in future years so that we don't have to always explain, oh, by the way, in the spring 21, May means primary. April is always the primary administration for 5 and 8. So let's just think of it as we're giving 5 and 8 in very, very late April. We're giving it on the 7th week of April. Okay.
All right, so hopefully you guys have noticed that we have updated the district and campus coordinator resources. That was on August 17th, I believe, is when it went live. We made some changes based on your feedback that we received. It now includes a separate section for out-of-district and out-of-school students, so hopefully that will be easier to find information on that. And then the one thing we heard from you guys is that not many of you were using that print on demand option that ETS provided in the past years, and so that is no longer available. If you want to print any section of the DCCR, you're welcome to do that.
If you don't mind, let me add a few things here, especially to the second bullet point, because as we mentioned earlier, all the updates we do because in this partnership, you tell us how we can serve you better, right? I want to call out Brenda from El Paso and also Christina, our TISNA president, because it's thanks to their feedback that we were able to create this additional section for out of district, out of the school on the DCCR. You also now saw individual rows on the calendar of events for out of district registration, out of the school registration, and all that is based again on your feedback. So we're trying to be as receptive as we can with all the good comments that you provide us throughout the year.
Thanks, Jose. Another thing that we're doing to try to simplify things as much as possible and make them as consistent as possible is we've redesigned the covers of our manuals and our educator guides. So they will have new colors to hopefully, in most cases, match the colors in the DCCR. For example, STAAR uses green. We will have new pictures. So all the manuals will have that one picture and all the educator guides will have that other picture. But we've also included or incorporated some of our other documents and turned them into educator guides because that's pretty much what they were. So the Student Success Initiative manual that we've produced in the past will now be the Student Success Initiative educator guides because it walks educators through all the steps and policies around the Student Success Initiative. We will also have the STAAR Oral Administration Educator Guide and the LPAC Decisions Educator Guide. So really, it's just renaming some of those documents that you've seen in the past and making them more consistent and easier to recognize.
We're also very excited, another change, update that we have for this year, as it was mentioned earlier on the intro, we are trying to improve the way we deliver training to facilitate the very important work that you all do, right? Our tradition, as always, has been at the end of the day for district testing coordinators who are not part of this training, they will get it from their education service centers, right? That is a requirement that should be completed by the date on the calendar of events. And they will turn it around to campus and to test administrators and so forth. However, we also wanted to be able to support where we can using evidence. So Rachel and the STAAR team, our STAAR manager and team, went back and looked at our data bank of irregularities. And we looked at the thousands of irregularities that we receive every year. And we tried to identify areas where we can provide additional support. Now, the last thing we want is to create another long boring training that no one is going to pay attention to. So that's why these modules are targeted to a specific functions for each one of the roles, DTC, CTC, TA, oral admin, so that we can emphasize the functions that are more controversial and end up creating irregularities. The other thing that we needed to do was to learn not only the type of irregularities that happen, but also we want to know how much does the field really know. So for this optional training module, you will have a quiz at the end. Now that quiz is not really to track anyone. The reality is that we need that quiz for the agency, for us, to have a better understanding of what is the common knowledge of test administration in the field, so future products can address those gaps once we identify. And as you see on the second bullet, I want to be super, super clear. This is optional, okay? This is to supplement the very important work that you do. Feel free. I hope that you see value and you use it, but no one here is forced to use it. It's just a way to provide additional resources for the areas that, based on data, we've seen the most common errors happen. I'm going to give a second. Rachel, is there anything that I missed here on this project that you would like to add? You want to talk maybe perhaps about target dates for release?
Yes, so I'm gonna, before I do that, I'm gonna reiterate in that second row, all of the bold things, big caps things, that this is really something to supplement and not replace, because they are narrow in focus on these topics. They cannot replace your full-blown training. They will not cover all of the information that needs to be covered. So again, these are really addressing very specific topics that tend to be our sort of frequent flyer issues that we see over and over year, as far as irregularities and issues that come up during the administration. So I just really wanted to point that out, and that it is, again, optional. I mentioned to many of the regional testing coordinators on our last call that our target date for release for these is going to be September 16th, that they will be posted in the DCCR in the training section, and that we are finalizing the DTC and CTC modules to be released first, and then the TA and the OA, the oral signed administration, modules will be coming shortly thereafter.
And Rachel, those modules have been developed in Qualtrics, is that correct?
Yes. So these are Qualtrics modules that are essentially a video that you will watch. There are some moments for pause, check for understanding within that, and then there's the actual embedded quiz that happens at the end. And so there are a couple of different things that you might find in that quiz section. There might be scenarios that you're asked to answer, true, false, things of that nature. But again, just trying to really assess how well did we explain it to you, and then how well was it retained.
Thank you, Rachel. And before we move into the next topic, just to be super clear, the current required path of training, if you were not part of today, if you're a district that needs to reach out to your ESC, and your ESC testing coordinator will provide you the training that we are delivering today, okay? Aha! The calendar updates. This is probably one of the biggest changes that is coming up for this year. We covered already the SSI changes for 5 and 8, but before that, we announced earlier a much bigger change, right? We're all, as we know, we're all affected by the current situation with the health crisis. That's the reason we're having this training. So we know that districts are going to need as much flexibility as possible to schedule their test administrations. Now, as you know, paper testing is very limited, but lucky for us, online testing is here and is here strongly. So because of online testing, we're able to create much more flexibility for districts. And we have been able to add additional testing weeks for all our administrations, right? For example, for December and June, one additional week has been added for tests that have multiple choice, bio, algebra, and US history, right? Now, for the spring, this is the biggest change. For the windows on April and May, we now have 5 weeks of online testing. So remember, the first week is always the primary week. That is when you test in paper, if you have decided to test on paper, and also online. But after the first week, all the additional optional weeks are for online only, and you have the freedom to schedule your sessions as you see fit. If you want specific details, please open the testing calendar. I'm sure everyone in this meeting have already seen the calendar, but remember, you can get the specific dates from there. They've been posted for a while now. Now, we've been able to extend testing for all of our programs, right? STAAR, December and June have 1 more week. April and May have now 5 weeks total each. And for STAAR Alternate 2, now we have a total of 8 weeks of testing, with 2 weeks being the preview window and 6 weeks of testing, test administration of STAAR Alternate 2. A very common question on STAAR Alternate 2 has been, in the past, because the window was shorter, we have some districts whose spring break happened within the preview window, and they ask for an extension of an early preview. Well, that's no longer necessary because we now have 8 weeks of total testing, so it's reasonable to think that we can accommodate within those 8 weeks. So we will not be approving early previews for this coming year. Remember that during the test administration window of STAAR Alternate 2, you can always preview the material so we can prepare the accommodation for the students, okay? Now, TELPAS. TELPAS is where it gets a little tricky. TELPAS Alternate has been extended. It's longer than before. I believe we extended, if you look at the calendar, you see exactly how much was the extension, but we added 1 more week of testing to the TELPAS Alternate window. TELPAS Reading Online, we were able to add 1 more week of testing, so you can complete your testing. However, TELPAS Holistic testing for K-1 and also for writing has remained within the same testing window as before, just like the listening and speaking online test. That is because all those need additional time to process the results, okay? I know that was a lot of rambling, but I promise you, if you look at the calendar of events or the testing calendar, we have all the specific dates there.
One other thing that we wanted to mention, because I know we've gotten a few questions about it. The calendar, the testing calendar does not indicate a field test, standalone field test this year. And we had talked about or discussed internally the possibility of doing a standalone field test, but we won't be doing a standalone field test during the 2020-2021 school year. I think that's it for the calendars right now. Oh, except for our next slide. So with the flexibility that districts have on the optional extended window for online testing, they all they need to do is register, volunteer to say, hey, I want to test online, and then they get that additional flexibility. They get that extended 1 week or 4 week window, and they also get the option to test on Mondays. Again, you cannot test on Mondays based on state law during that primary administration where the paper and the online test are scheduled on the state testing calendar. However, if you opt in for this additional online testing window extension, then you can schedule some tests on Mondays if you so choose. It's just coming with that optional flexibility. And that was in our Texas administrative rule that just closed for public comment. And so the final rule will be posted in the Texas Register in a few weeks.
So just to be super clear, what does it mean? The flexibility we're able to do now, the first week of any STAAR administration window is a 4-day week, right? It's Tuesday to Friday. Beyond week 1, you can test on any day. So it's week 2 and up, you can test on any day, including Monday. It's up to you to schedule those.
However, that's for the multiple choice test only. The ones with a writing component have specific days, usually Tuesdays.
And because it's now a 5-week window, we were able to add assign a day for all the tests with writing component in each of the 5 windows.
Right.
5 windows, 5 weeks.
The 5-week windows.
All right, so very excited to announce this. This has taken a little longer. As you all know, you've been requesting this for a very long time, but we need to make sure that, first of all, the technology was where we needed to be, and we can also offer a product that was comparable with the best tools that the students are currently using. So with that, I'm very excited to announce that we have a new PMP for this coming year. If you already checked your registration file layout for this year, you already know, right? But for the students that qualify for additional modes of entry, specifically speech to text, we are now going to be able to provide the tool embedded within our testing platform. This is for students who meet the eligibility for the accommodation or basic transcription or spelling assistance, and this is their required mode of entry. So every test that has a writing component for writing, including Spanish, 7 English writing, English 1, 2, and 3, when there's an essay that requires an open-ended response, you will see this feature, if it's turned on, of course. The feature, the icon, you can see it is a microphone. We wanted to make sure, like I said, that this was to the quality that it needed to be. So our partners, ETS, they have not created a speech-to-text engine. They have instead licensed a product from Google. So for students who are used to use the voice tool on Google Docs, the engine that recognizes speech is the same one. So it functions in the same one. That, of course, includes all the limitations, right? As you know, I don't know if it happens to you, but Siri on my phone never understands me. Now, I've heard that I have an accent, but maybe that's it. But anyway, so that's what we want students to practice with plenty of time. So we will have practice tests this fall. We will also have tutorial videos like for all other tools, but wait, there's more. We've always heard your concerns of us adding these tools, but not having an equivalent instructional opportunity for the students to practice and become familiar. This is absolutely more important for a feature like speech to text. So we're very excited to announce that we're going to have a web browser tool for a speech to text that your students can use during instruction. Soon, once we have the web browser finalized, we're going to send you the link that we're hoping that you share with your instructional partners, because we want students who require this in their instruction to become familiar with our tool, which, remember, is the same engine as Google Docs, but we were able to restrict some of the functions that could potentially affect the scoring of the essay. This way, students can practice in instruction with the same tool, and then they'll be ready for testing day using the tool embedded on the SOTP. The details and the address for the web tool are coming soon. I hope you're as excited as I am, because we've been waiting for this for a while. Another update, your registration file has been posted for a while then on texasassessment.gov. There are only minor changes to the reg file this year. Remember, we are now on our second year of using the same file for all our programs, interims, STAAR, STAAR Alternate 2, TELPAS, and TELPAS Alternate. What are the changes? A couple of years ago, or maybe 1 year ago, the PIMS submission field for LEP added a new value, right? The value of 5. So we wanted to make sure that it was easier for you to transition using the same data. So our assessment file, now that field also matches, and we have included the value of 5. But I want to be super clear that everybody understands that doesn't mean just monitor 5. It means the student has been monitored for 5 years or more. Like Mariana taught me this trait. We call it the ever EL, right? So if the student was an ever EL at any point, that's the value you mark. The other change has been the addition, obviously, of the speech-to-text code under test version if you need to activate the speech-to-text tool. Another really big change for this year, material shipments. So by tradition, we've been delivering your overage. It's always 10% of your order, and it included Form 1, right? This has created an overemphasis in the use of Form 1s in schools, which is starting to, it could potentially create a risk for our field test abilities, and especially in the areas where we have smaller populations, like Spanish reading. This is really, honestly, for all the information I've gathered, this is nothing but tradition. For all of you who with me were part of the tax program, the tax programs require you to use Form 1 for oral administration. Well, that's not the case for the STAAR, right? It's been quite a few years now that all you need to do is make sure that your test administrator and the student have the same form number, but does not have to be Form 1. Because of that, we're no longer going to ship Form 1s with your overages. We are going to send you all other form numbers. Now you're going to say, hey, Jose, but I need Form 1s. Yes, remember, you always have the window where you can adjust your counts, and you can request Form 1s within those counts. However, the automatic 10% overage that we send, it will no longer contain Form 1s. See if that helps us distribute the form numbers better so we can have a more solid field test process, which will lead us on keep building solid tests. More updates on materials. As you all know, our spring administration was canceled. It was canceled pretty much when we have already started shipping the April 2020 materials. Some of you have to return our 2020 materials. We also, because it was already March, we had all our main materials already ready to go. And as you can imagine, as a state agency, we need to make sure not only that we reduce waste, but we also need to be judicious in how we spend taxpayers' money. So there's no reason for those materials to just get discarded. So we're trying to find the best way to use those materials for this coming administration. So what does that mean? Does that mean that some districts will receive testing materials on paper, which the cover will say 2020, and some that will say 21? Now, we're working with ETS to minimize the impact to your campuses as much as we can, right? So districts may receive all of them, but campus, we're trying to make sure that there's no confusion. I can promise that it's always going to be the case, but we're trying to make the best we can to reduce the confusion because of this. The good thing is that the answer documents for the general STAAR admin don't have a year. So don't worry, it's not like you have to keep track of your booklet and your answer document. Regardless of what booklet you use, we're gonna record it on the same answer document because the year is not included there. Now, I know you're getting ahead of me because you already saw the one-on-one on the next book, but let's move into the next slide. That leads us to the changes to the answer document. In order to code better our field test forms for all the purposes that we have to do within the agency, we added one more row to the possible digits under the test form number field. For example, you see here's an example of a form that is one-on-one. Now you'll be able to code that on the answer document. The other change to the answer documents, as we mentioned, to match the registration file changes, you will see the E5 codes under the LEP column, and that is the E5 for the Ever EL. Remember, you mark that not just for year 5, but if at any point the student was an English learner. And just a note to remember that Braille and paper with embedded supports have their own answer documents that come with your kit when you order. Another change, well, this is a change for us. This is really not a change for you. So I'm going to start with the second bullet. So I want to be super, super clear. This will have no impact on the way you operate your test administration, okay? But now that online is a lot more robust, more popular, we want to make sure that we can leverage its capabilities as much as we can. So we're going to have multiple field test forms potentially within the online testing system. Some of you may not see it because we're going to try to approach this as cautious as possible. But again, I want to remind you that this will in no way impact your process, right? It's the same process to register students, to set up PMPs, to print your tickets. This is just for us, but as always, we want to be super upfront and let you know that we may see multiple online test forms.
Even though you shouldn't be looking.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Good point. Another great feature, so the new on-demand data file. There's quite a few things to clarify. So let's start with from the beginning, right? Okay, great. So you needed flexibility, so we gave you 5 weeks in the spring to test, right? So I know you're going to say, so that means that I need to wait 5 or 6 weeks for my results? No, it would have been unreasonable for us to extend testing so much and make you wait for the results. So instead, what we're able to do is as soon as we can process the information for each student, we will make what we call an on-demand data file ready for you. Now, on your calendar of events, you're going to see 2 rows, right? On-demand data file for online results and on-demand data file for paper results. I want to be super clear that this is the same file. What we're putting here is what is the date by which the first available data will be ready for you to download. Does that make sense? Obviously, online is going to be faster because there's no time to shipping or scanning or processing those answer documents. That's why we needed to separate it. So if all your students test online, well, you're going to get your student level results earlier than ever. If your students test on paper, guess what? You're still going to get them earlier than ever. It's just not going to be as early as online. Now, it's always one file, and that every time you recall it, it will get updated, right? So let's say you test 90% of your students online on week 1. Well, by the date listed of first availability, you will get all your results. Students that test after that, once the tests have been submitted and at least 8 hours have passed, the next time you call on that file, you should see them listed in there, okay? So we're making this available to you so that you can make all the important decisions with the information you need. For your official report, you will have to wait as always, and that is listed also on your calendar of events. Now, I know the question is going to be, am I required to provide this to parents? You're required to provide the official results to parents like we always have. We're making this available so districts can make the decisions they need with the information they need. However, districts get to decide if they want to share it or not. Okay? I don't know why I'm screaming.
I don't know. By the way, the calendar of events has been posted, but it will be shipped to districts, and you'll get this information in Monday's email from ETS. It'll be shipped to districts and arrive by September 11th.
Well, we're going to ship it starting on September 11th, so you will get it a little after that. But please let us know if you're still not able to be on your facilities to receive it. Just email the ETS crew so we can make better arrangements, okay? Another big change, and again, this is change that is based on the feedback that we have received. Printed report cards, printed student report cards. Now, for all our programs, if your district wants to receive printed report cards, you will have to opt in. How are you going to do that? Within the system, you're going to let us know for both vendors. Now, there is a date on your calendar of events by which you have to let us know so we can print your report cards. If you don't want printed report cards, there's nothing you need to do. You will get your electronic files as always. And of course, they will always be ready on the student portal with the credentials, right? The second bullet, we want to point out, there's no change here, but it can get tricky. However, the printed student labels are the reverse. If you don't want them, you need to let us know you want to opt out. So the default for report cards is going to be not printed unless you want it. The default for labels is we print it unless you tell us not. Is that clear? And I think we're getting close to the last updates. So the help desk, this is not new because we announced it last year, but we announced it as an additional feature. Now we're going all in on the student assessment help desk. So this is the best way. This is the best way to communicate with you guys. And also, honestly, the whole point behind the move to the help desk is that allow us to get the data we need to improve our customer service practices, okay? We are trying to replace the link to the help desk everywhere that we used to have a link to an email inbox. The email inboxes are not going away because I understand that many of you have bookmarked them and it's easier for you to communicate that way. However, we're trying to move away from it. So we're not going to make them public either. Instead, we're going to have the help desk link.
Right. We want to be able to record your questions within the help desk, which the system allows us to do that, so that we can give consistent responses and put out information to address those more common questions that we get in the help desk. So please try to remind your staff and the people that you work with to use the help desk function.
It's also a way for us to see all the responses and we can get ahead of the concerns and provide guidance so you don't have to let us know what the concern is. Promise you that makes sense. Go ahead. Danny, I think we're ready for the next check-in questions. Let's see, we're still awake. All right, so during the extended online testing windows, as districts allowed to administer tests with a writing component, 4 and 7 writing, English 1 or English 2, on any day of the week?
Give you a few minutes to answer yes or no.
All right, I think we have majority now. Well, this is encouraging because it's a new change, but I was kind of hoping for 100%. Remember, tests that have a writing component have to be administered on the assigned date, regardless of paper or online. Why is that? Because we have to protect the isolated prompt within those forms, right? We don't want students to have access to that before others, because if we share it, we can potentially have a security risk that may lead to nullifying tests, which absolutely we don't want to do. So remember, while we still have the flexibility of more time to administer this test, within those weeks, there should still be assigned on their scheduled day.
All righty, I think you're gonna close that out.
We are now going to take our third awkward pause for the recording.